Think about the last time someone fooled you. Not a stranger on the internet, someone close. A friend who borrowed money and vanished. A partner who said all the right things and meant none of them. A coworker who smiled in meetings and stabbed you in the back the second you left the room. You probably told yourself afterward, I should have seen it coming. But the real answer is stranger than you think. You were never going to see it coming because your brain wasn't built to catch it. It was built to do something else entirely, and that something else is exactly what got you. Here's the question that should bother you. If lying, manipulation, and betrayal have existed for as long as humans have existed, why hasn't your brain evolved a perfect lie detector by now? Why do even smart, careful, emotionally intelligent people still get conned? The answer starts with something that happens in less than a tenth of a second. Psychologist Alexander Todorov ran an experiment where he showed people photographs of unfamiliar faces for just 100 milliseconds, barely enough time to blink. And yet, in that flash, people already formed judgments about whether that face looked trustworthy, competent, or likable. Not after getting to know the person, not after watching how they treated a waiter or kept a promise. Before any of that, your brain doesn't wait for evidence. It manufactures a verdict instantly based on nothing but bone structure and an expression, and then it hands that verdict to you, labeled as truth. This is where it gets uncomfortable. That snap judgment doesn't just sit quietly in the background. It actively distorts everything you experience afterward. This is called the halo effect, and it was first documented decades ago by psychologist Edward Thorndike, who noticed that people who were rated as physically attractive were also automatically rated as more intelligent, more competent, and more moral, even when there was zero evidence for any of it. One trait you can see with your eyes leaks into traits you can't see at all. A warm smile becomes proof of a warm heart. A confident handshake becomes proof of competence. None of it is actually proof of anything. It's your brain taking a shortcut and calling it intuition. Now here's the open loop worth sitting with. If this is just how human perception works, a normal, universal quirk of the brain, then somewhere out there, someone has figured out how to use it on purpose. They have, and it's been studied directly. Robert Cialdini spent years embedded with salespeople, fundraisers, and con artists, documenting exactly which moves reliably override people's better judgment. What he found wasn't exotic. It was almost insultingly simple. People comply with requests from those they like. People extend trust to those who seem similar to them, who compliment them, who appear confident, who seem to already be liked by others. None of these signals have anything to do with whether a person is actually honest. They are simply the inputs your brain already treats as evidence of honesty. Because for most of human history, in small tribes where everyone knew everyone, those signals usually were reliable enough. Confidence often did correlate with competence. Warmth often did correlate with good intentions. The shortcut worked well enough, often enough to survive evolution. It just doesn't work anymore. Not the way the world operates now. You no longer only meet people who've been vetted by your entire community for years before you ever speak to them. You meet a charming stranger at a bar, a recruiter with a great pitch, a match on an app who says exactly what you wanted to hear. The shortcut that used to be calibrated for tribes of 150 people is now running on a world of 8 billion strangers, and manipulators have learned, whether through experience or instinct, exactly which buttons to press. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The people most skilled at exploiting this aren't necessarily the ones who seem shady. They're often the opposite. Research on con artists and manipulative personalities consistently finds that the most successful ones are unusually good at appearing warm, likable, and trustworthy specifically because they understand, consciously or not, that warmth is the master key. Once someone has triggered that warmth signal in you, your guard doesn't just lower a little. It drops almost entirely, and you start interpreting their future behavior through a generous lens, explaining away red flags instead of registering them. There's a closely related trap that makes this even worse once you're already invested. Leon Festinger's research on cognitive dissonance showed that once you've committed to believing something, like believing this person is trustworthy, your mind works hard to protect that belief rather than test it. Festinger studied this in cult members who kept believing even after their predicted apocalypse failed to arrive. They didn't conclude they'd been wrong. They found reasons to believe even harder. The same mechanism runs quietly in your relationships. Once you've decided someone is good, contradicting evidence doesn't update your opinion of them. It gets explained away instead, because changing your mind would mean admitting you were fooled, and admitting that costs you something psychologically. So you're not dealing with one flaw. You're dealing with two flaws stacked on top of each other. First impressions that form before you have evidence, and a mind that defends those impressions once they exist, even against evidence that should change them. Here's the modern mirror, because this isn't some rare event that only happens to gullible people. It's happening to you constantly in smaller, quieter ways every single day. The influencer whose confident tone makes their advice feel more credible than someone less polished but more accurate. The interview candidate who gets hired because they seem like a good fit, a phrase that often just means they felt familiar and warm. The dating profile where one good photo and a funny bio convinces you that you already know what kind of person is on the other side. None of these are conscious decisions where you weigh evidence. They're your brain running the exact same 100-millisecond shortcut Todorov measured, just dressed up in a different setting. So what do you actually do with this, since you clearly can't switch off a system that's been running since before you were born? You stop trusting your instant read of someone's character, and you start treating it as a hypothesis instead of a conclusion. A first impression is data about how someone presents themselves, not data about who they actually are. The two only match up after time, consistency, and pressure have tested them, because anyone can seem warm for an hour. Far fewer people stay consistent for a year. The real signal was never in the spark you felt in the first 5 minutes. It was always in what happened after that spark had time to fade and ordinary behavior took over. There's one more layer to this, and it might be the most dangerous one because it doesn't even require the manipulator to be skilled at all. It just requires a crowd. Solomon Asch ran a now famous series of experiments where he asked people a simple question: which of 3 lines matches the length of a reference line? Alone, almost everyone got it right instantly. It wasn't a hard question. But when Asch placed each person in a group of actors who confidently gave the wrong answer out loud, something strange happened. A significant portion of real participants abandoned their own eyes and agreed with the group, even though the answer was obviously wrong. They weren't being polite. Many of them later admitted they genuinely started doubting what they'd clearly seen. If a crowd can override your eyesight on something this simple, imagine what it can do to something as fuzzy and subjective as judging a person's character. This is why manipulators rarely operate completely alone, and why scams so often involve some version of social proof. A few enthusiastic testimonials, a room that already seems to trust this person, a friend who vouches for them first. None of that is evidence the person is trustworthy. It's just enough social pressure to make your own doubts feel like the thing that's wrong, rather than the warning they actually are. Your brain treats consensus as a stand-in for accuracy, because for most of human history, the group usually did know something you didn't. That shortcut is now being borrowed by people who understand exactly how to fake a consensus that never existed. That's the part most people never learn until they have already been burned. The brain that's reading this sentence right now will form a snap verdict about the next stranger you meet, before you've even finished your first sentence to them, and it will feel exactly as certain as it always does. It will not feel like a guess. It will feel like knowing. The only real defense you have is remembering that feeling certain and being right have never actually been the same thing.
If you enjoyed this video and want more psychology insights that can help you think, learn, and grow, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.